My son asked me to babysit his child, but the moment the little one whispered those words, my blood ran cold, and I knew I had to call my lawyer. I can't do it, Ethan. I've got too much work, I said, gripping the phone tighter than I meant to. My voice came out sharper, defensive, like I was protecting myself from something more than just responsibility. On the other end, Ethan sighed. Dad, it's just for the weekend. I wouldn't ask if I had another option. I could picture him rubbing his forehead, the way he always did when frustrated, that tight smile he wore when trying to hide impatience. My son had mastered the art of keeping emotions under control, something he got from me. And maybe that's why his words cut deeper. Please, she'll be no trouble. No trouble. Right. I hesitated, the silence between us stretching like a taut wire. The sound of the clock ticking in my living room filled the pause. Every second made my chest heavier, like the weight of years of failures pressing down. Finally, I exhaled. Fine. Bring her over. When Ethan dropped Lily off, he barely looked at me. His smile was practiced, polite, the kind you wear at funerals. He crouched to hug his daughter, whispering something in her ear. She nodded, clutching her stuffed rabbit tighter. Then he straightened, avoiding my eyes. She's got her pajamas, toothbrush, everything she needs, he said, glancing toward the door like he couldn't get out fast enough. I forced a smile, though my jaw ached from the effort. Yeah, we'll be fine. Lily stood there silently, watching us. Her dark eyes were wide, unblinking, like she was studying me, measuring me. It was unnerving. Say bye to Grandpa, Ethan prompted. Bye, she said softly, her lips barely moving. No wave, no smile, just that stare. Then Ethan was gone, and the door clicked shut, leaving behind a silence that pressed in on me. The house felt different with her in it, heavier. The faint smell of Clara's old perfume drifted down the hallway. The same scent I hadn't smelled in years, sweet, floral, cloying. My throat tightened. I cleared my voice. So, Lily, you hungry? She shook her head. You want to watch TV? Another shake. Instead, she sat on the rug with her dolls. The sound of plastic limbs clicking together filled the air. She made them whisper to each other, giggling under her breath. I couldn't make out the words, but the cadence of it, the secretive tone, made me uneasy. I sat in my chair, pretending to read the paper, but my eyes kept flicking up. She wasn't playing like a child. She was observing me. Her doll's head tilted just as her own did, both of them staring with glassy eyes. Hours dragged on. By the time I tucked her into bed, the house was dead quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the steady tick-tick of the clock in the hall. I pulled the blanket up to her chin. Sleep well, kiddo. She clutched her rabbit and looked at me with those wide, knowing eyes. For the first time that night, she spoke more than a single word. Her lips barely parted. Her voice was a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a knife. Mommy doesn't like you. The words hung in the air, sour and heavy. My breath caught. I stared at her, my mind stumbling for meaning, for logic. What? My voice cracked. She didn't answer. She turned her head to the wall, her small shoulders rising and falling with slow breaths, as though she had already drifted off to sleep. But I knew she wasn't asleep. Her little hand tightened around the rabbit. Her lips curved into the faintest smile, just enough for me to see before the darkness swallowed her face. I stood frozen at the edge of her bed, the echo of her whisper drilling into my skull. Mommy doesn't like you. Her whisper was not innocent. It was an accusation. The room was dark, the kind of darkness that pressed in from every corner, swallowing even the faint outlines of furniture. I had just settled into bed when I heard it, Lily's tiny voice slicing through the silence like a blade dipped in ice. I know what you did to Mommy. The words weren't loud. They weren't even steady. But they cut deeper than any scream. My chest seized, my pulse hammering so hard it felt like it might burst through my ribcage. I turned slowly, afraid that any sudden movement might shatter the fragile thread of quiet that held the room together. She was curled up at the far end of the mattress, her little arms wrapped tightly around that frayed cloth doll she never let go of. The doll's button eyes glimmered faintly in the thin crack of moonlight slicing through the curtain. For a moment I told myself I must have misheard. She's half asleep, I thought, just mumbling. Children dream out loud sometimes. It's nothing. But the way her voice trembled, the way her small fingers clenched harder around the doll's arm, it wasn't a dream. It felt rehearsed, deliberate. I swallowed, my throat bone dry. Lily! My voice cracked. What did you say? She didn't answer. The silence stretched, heavy, suffocating. I forced a weak chuckle, hoping it might undo whatever knot had just formed in my stomach. You must have had a bad dream, sweetheart. Go back to sleep. Still nothing. She shifted slightly, the mattress groaning under her small weight. Then she whispered again, barely audible, but clear enough to freeze the blood in my veins. I know. 2 words, quiet, fragile. Yet they struck harder than a thunderclap. My breath hitched. The smell of dust and mothballs from Clara's old blanket filled my nostrils, dragging me back to that night, the night I had buried deeper than any nightmare. My fingers twitched against the sheets, the memory clawing up through layers of denial and dread. How could she know? Had Ethan told her something? He wouldn't, would he? He'd promised to keep it buried, promised never to breathe a word. But Ethan's promises were worth less than ash. Or worse, did she know on her own? I wanted to reach for her, to pull her into my arms, but my hands felt heavy, like they belonged to someone else. My body wouldn't move. My mind raced instead, searching for cracks, for leaks, for anything that might explain how those words had escaped her lips. I forced my voice steady, though my insides trembled. Lily, Mommy's fine. You mustn't say things like that. Her little shoulders tensed. I saw it, the faint shiver that rippled through her frame. She clutched the doll tighter, pressing its head against her cheek. Don't lie. The whisper was raw, fragile. But it wasn't a child's voice anymore. It was something older, something heavy with knowledge no 5-year-old should carry. My chest constricted. A hot prickle burned at the back of my eyes, though I fought it down. I couldn't cry, not now, not in front of her. Instead, I forced myself to breathe, each inhale jagged, each exhale shaking. Think, control the moment. Children repeat what they hear. Someone planted this. That's all. Who told you that? I asked, sharper than I intended. Her head tilted slightly, but she didn't answer. Instead, she hummed, a low, broken tune, off-key, familiar in a way that turned my stomach. It was the lullaby Clara used to hum. The same one she sang that final night. I almost screamed, but Lily stopped as suddenly as she'd started, leaving the room steeped in silence once again. A silence so dense I swore I could hear the blood rushing through my ears. Finally, she shifted onto her side, turning her back to me. Her small body curled into a tight ball, her breathing shallow but steady. I stared at her, my mind unraveling, panic clawing its way through my chest. My hands dug into the sheets until my knuckles ached. Did she really know? Or was this Ethan's twisted game bleeding into her innocence? Minutes passed, maybe hours. I couldn't tell anymore. Sleep was impossible. I lay there, eyes wide open, heart thundering, as her words echoed endlessly in my head. I know what you did to Mommy. The words weren't loud. They weren't even steady. But they cut deeper than any scream. My chest seized, my pulse hammering so hard it felt like it might burst through my ribcage. I turned slowly, afraid that any sudden movement might shatter the fragile thread of quiet that held the room together. She was curled up at the far end of the mattress, her little arms wrapped tightly around that frayed cloth doll she never let go of. The doll's button eyes glimmered faintly in the thin crack of moonlight slicing through the curtain. For a moment I told myself I must have misheard. She's half asleep, I thought. Just mumbling. Children dream out loud sometimes. It's nothing. But the way her voice trembled, the way her small fingers clenched harder around the doll's arm, it wasn't a dream. It felt rehearsed, deliberate. I swallowed, my throat bone dry. Lily! My voice cracked. What did you say? She didn't answer. The silence stretched, heavy, suffocating. I forced a weak chuckle, hoping it might undo whatever knot had just formed in my stomach. You must have had a bad dream, sweetheart. Go back to sleep. Still nothing. She shifted slightly, the mattress groaning under her small weight. Then she whispered again, barely audible, but clear enough to freeze the blood in my veins. I know. 2 words, quiet, fragile. Yet they struck harder than a thunderclap. My breath hitched. The smell of dust and mothballs from Clara's old blanket filled my nostrils, dragging me back to that night, the night I had buried deeper than any nightmare. My fingers twitched against the sheets, the memory clawing up through layers of denial and dread. How could she know? Had Ethan told her something? He wouldn't, would he? He'd promised to keep it buried, promised never to breathe a word. But Ethan's promises were worth less than ash. Or worse, did she know on her own? I wanted to reach for her, to pull her into my arms, but my hands felt heavy, like they belonged to someone else. My body wouldn't move. My mind raced instead, searching for cracks, for leaks, for anything that might explain how those words had escaped her lips. I forced my voice steady, though my insides trembled. Lily, Mommy's fine. You mustn't say things like that. Her little shoulders tensed. I saw it, the faint shiver that rippled through her frame. She clutched the doll tighter, pressing its head against her cheek. Don't lie. The whisper was raw, fragile. But it wasn't a child's voice anymore. It was something older, something heavy with knowledge no 5-year-old should carry. My chest constricted. A hot prickle burned at the back of my eyes, though I fought it down. I couldn't cry, not now, not in front of her. Instead, I forced myself to breathe, each inhale jagged, each exhale shaking. Think, control the moment. Children repeat what they hear. Someone planted this, that's all. Who told you that? I asked, sharper than I intended. Her head tilted slightly, but she didn't answer. Instead, she hummed, a low, broken tune, off-key, familiar in a way that turned my stomach. It was the lullaby Clara used to hum. The same one she sang that final night. I almost screamed, but Lily stopped as suddenly as she'd started, leaving the room steeped in silence once again. A silence so dense I swore I could hear the blood rushing through my ears. Finally, she shifted onto her side, turning her back to me. Her small body curled into a tight ball, her breathing shallow but steady. I stared at her, my mind unraveling, panic clawing its way through my chest. My hands dug into the sheets until my knuckles ached. Did she really know? Or was this Ethan's twisted game bleeding into her innocence? Minutes passed, maybe hours. I couldn't tell anymore. Sleep was impossible. I lay there, eyes wide open, heart thundering, as her words echoed endlessly in my head. I know what you did to Mommy. When the first faint light of morning seeped through the curtains, I felt no relief. Just exhaustion, dread, and a gnawing certainty that something was horribly wrong. I forced myself up, every muscle stiff from the night's torment. Lily sat at the edge of the bed, swinging her legs gently, her doll perched on her lap. She turned toward me, eyes wide and impossibly calm. Her lips curled into the faintest smile, almost mocking. And then she spoke, a single sentence, one that made my blood run cold, my stomach twist into knots, and my knees nearly buckle. Because no 5-year-old should know the name she just called me. What Lily called me. Jim! I nearly dropped the mug in my hand. The ceramic scraped against the counter as I steadied it, but the sound was drowned by the blood roaring in my ears. My name isn't Jim. It never has been. But Clara used to call me that. Not lovingly. Not softly. She spatted at me when she wanted to cut deep. A mockery. A private insult born from the ugliest corners of our marriage. And now, here it was again, falling from the lips of my 5-year-old daughter, wrapped in the same cruel lilt Clara used to wield. Jim! Lily said again, smiling too sweetly, her small legs swinging as she sat at the breakfast table. You look funny when you're scared. My chest tightened. My throat tasted metallic, like blood on the tongue. Lily! I forced a laugh, though my voice came out hollow. That's not Daddy's name. Where'd you hear that, huh? Her eyes sparkled in a way I'd never seen before. Too knowing. Too sharp. Mommy used to say it, didn't she? My hand froze halfway to the coffee pot. The air in the kitchen seemed to thicken, the faint hum of the refrigerator suddenly deafening. How do you know that? My words slipped out before I could stop them. Too fast. Too harsh. She tilted her head, humming under her breath. The tune was broken, shaky, but familiar enough to twist my stomach into knots. Clara's lullaby. The one she used to sing before bed, the same one she'd hummed on her final night. The night everything shattered. I gripped the counter until my knuckles ached. My mind replayed the images I fought to bury. Clara shouting, the slammed door rattling its frame, the crash of glass against the floor. And then silence, thick, final, suffocating silence. Lily's voice pulled me back. Mommy told me. My heart stuttered. No, I said quickly, shaking my head. Mommy's gone, Lily. She can't. She told me. She insisted, her little fingers tracing lazy circles on the table. Her eyes never left mine. She tells me lots of things when you're not listening. A cold sweat broke across my skin. I swallowed hard, trying to ground myself, to wrestle control of the moment. Children make things up. They repeat scraps. She's too young to understand. That's all. Sweetheart. I managed, though my voice trembled. Sometimes our minds, they play tricks. Dreams feel real, but they're just dreams. Her lips curled into a tiny, mocking smile. A smile too much like Clara's. Was it a dream when the glass broke? She asked softly. My grip slipped, coffee sloshing over the rim of the mug. My hands trembled so violently I had to set it down before I shattered it. Lily! I snapped, harsher than I intended. My chest heaved. Enough. Her small shoulders flinched, but she didn't look away. Instead, her expression softened, her voice barely above a whisper. Why are you scared, Daddy? Because you shouldn't know any of this. Because every word you say drags me closer to the night I've tried to forget. Because someone, maybe Ethan, is pulling strings, whispering poison into your ears. I wanted to scream it. Instead, I forced myself to breathe, to act normal, to smother the panic clawing inside me. Eat your breakfast, I muttered, turning away, pretending to busy myself at the sink. My reflection in the window betrayed me. Wild eyes, jaw clenched, sweat beading on my forehead. Behind me, Lily hummed that lullaby again. Off-key, fragile, haunting. I nearly broke the glass I was rinsing. The rest of the morning blurred into a haze. Every sound, every laugh from her lips felt like a knife against old scars. I couldn't shake the thought, how much does she know? Who's feeding her these ghosts? By noon my nerves were shredded. My hands shook so badly I could barely pour another cup of coffee. I told myself it was exhaustion, that I needed sleep. But deep down, I knew better. Because when I walked past the hallway an hour later, I froze. Lily was pressed against the wall, tiny fingers clutching the phone receiver. Her voice was low, conspiratorial, and I swear I heard her whisper Clara's name. The phone wasn't plugged in, but Lily swore Clara was on the line. I froze in the doorway, the weight of her words sinking like a stone in my gut. She sat cross-legged on the carpet, her tiny hands gripping the old cordless phone we hadn't used in years. The charging base wasn't even connected. Dust ringed the plug on the wall. Clara says hi, she whispered, her lips curling into an innocent smile. My throat tightened. Sweetheart, who's Clara? Her gaze stayed fixed on the phone, eyes wide and dreamy, like she was listening. A soft giggle escaped her. She says you don't remember, but she remembers you. A chill rushed over me. I lunged forward, snatching the phone from her hands. It was cold, heavier than I remembered, and when I pressed it to my ear there was nothing, just static silence. No dial tone. Nothing. Where did you get this? My voice cracked. Lily shrugged, tilting her head like it was the silliest question in the world. It rang. I picked it up. Clara wanted to talk. The phone slipped from my grip, landing hard against the wooden floor. The hollow thud echoed louder than it should have in the quiet house. I forced a smile, though my chest was tight. Lily, phones don't ring when they're not plugged in. Her face softened, confusion flickering. But it did, Daddy. It really did. Something in her expression unsettled me, an unshaken certainty, like she believed it more than anything. The silence that followed pressed against my ears. Even the hum of the refrigerator felt distant, swallowed by the thick air. I bent down, scooping up the phone, gripping it so hard my knuckles whitened. I needed to hear someone sane, someone grounded. I grabbed my cell and called Ethan. He picked up after 2 rings. Dad? Everything okay? His voice carried that flat edge of mild annoyance. My hand trembled as I pressed the phone to my ear. Ethan, has Lily been saying anything strange? About people? Friends you don't know? He let out a sigh. Dad, she's a kid. Imaginary friends are normal. Don't overthink it. This isn't imaginary. I swallowed hard, lowering my voice. She just said Clara called her. On the cordless phone. The one that isn't even connected. There was a pause, then a chuckle, forced, impatient. Come on, you're letting your paranoia run wild again. Remember last time? You thought the power flicker meant someone was tampering with the lines. You need sleep. My jaw clenched. I wanted to argue, scream, but the words lodged in my throat. He didn't believe me. He never did. Fine. I muttered. Forget it. I hung up before he could say more. The house suddenly felt smaller, suffocating. I set the cordless phone on the counter, but its weight lingered in my palm, a phantom heaviness. As the evening crept in, shadows stretched long against the walls. Every creak of the floorboards echoed like footsteps. I tried distracting myself with the TV, but the volume only amplified the silence behind it. Lily had gone to bed easily, too easily, humming softly as she curled under her blanket, a tune I didn't recognize. When I checked on her later, the dolls she always carried, porcelain with faded blue ribbons, sat upright in the chair by her desk, facing me. I froze. I hadn't placed it there. Its glassy eyes caught the dim hallway light, gleaming like they were alive. I reached for it with shaking hands, but something in my chest warned me off. Instead, I pulled the bedroom door shut and leaned my forehead against it, listening to Lily's slow breaths from the other side. By midnight, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, every muscle tense. The silence wasn't empty. It was loaded, like the air was holding its breath. And then, at 3 a.m., I woke with my heart hammering. A sound drifted down the hallway. A lullaby. Soft, sweet, familiar in the worst possible way. Clara's lullaby. But no one was there to sing it. The door I swore I'd never open again was already unlocked. My breath hitched. The melody floated down the hallway like smoke, wrapping around me, tugging at something raw in my chest. Barefoot, I crept across the cold wooden floor, each step pressing a shiver through my bones. The sound pulled me closer. A lullaby. Clara's lullaby. The one I used to hear late at night, back when things were still normal. Back when I still trusted the world. But Clara was gone. And that room was supposed to be sealed forever. I stopped outside the door. The lock, snapped clean, jagged edges of metal still hanging. My throat tightened. I whispered to myself, "No one has a key. No one." Still, the door stood ajar, just wide enough for a sliver of silver moonlight to cut through. I pushed. The hinges groaned. The scent hit me first, vanilla. Clara's favorite candles, sweet and thick, clinging to the air as if she'd just blown one out. My heart thudded harder. "Lily?" My voice cracked. No answer. I stepped inside. Papers littered the floor, yellow notes, old receipts, sketches I didn't remember. Some were torn, edges curled like they'd been handled too many times. And then I saw it. On the desk, under the beam of moonlight, lay a bracelet, silver, with a chipped sapphire in the center. My blood ran cold, because I knew that bracelet. I had thrown it away years ago, after Clara's funeral. I remembered the clang it made against the bottom of the trash bin. I remembered swearing I'd never look at it again. Yet here it was, gleaming like it had been waiting. My chest burned. "No, this isn't possible." A sound stirred behind me. Soft humming. I turned. Lily sat in the corner, her legs folded beneath her, eyes half closed. Her lips moved with the melody, perfectly in tune with the lullaby. Her small fingers twisted the hem of her nightdress. She looked distant. "Lily!" I rushed toward her, dropping to my knees. "What are you doing here? Who told you to come in this room?" She blinked slowly, as if waking from a dream. "Clara said it was okay." The name sliced through me like glass. Don't say that. She told me to sing with her. She said you'd hear it and remember?" Lily's voice was calm, detached, too calm for a child caught where she shouldn't be. I grabbed her shoulders, maybe too tightly. "Who told you that? Who put that idea in your head?" Her lower lip trembled. "You're hurting me." I loosened my grip immediately, guilt clawing up my throat. "I'm sorry, baby, I'm sorry. I don't understand." She looked past me, her gaze fixed on the desk. "Clara said you'd be angry?" A prickle ran down my spine. I whipped around. The bracelet caught the moonlight again, gleaming brighter this time. For a moment I swore it pulsed. I stumbled to my feet, pacing. My palms were slick with sweat. My mind screamed this isn't real, but my body knew better. I muttered, "This is someone's sick joke. It has to be." The silence that followed made my words feel hollow. "Daddy?" Lily's voice was small now, uncertain. "Are you mad at Clara?" I turned back to her, anger boiling, fear twisting into something darker. "Clara is gone. She can't talk to you, do you hear me? She can't." Lily flinched, tears pooling in her eyes, but her voice was steady. "Then why did she write you a letter?" My heart stopped. "What?" She pointed toward the desk. I forced myself to look. Among the scattered papers, resting neatly on top, was an envelope. Yellowed, edges curled. My name written across the front, in Clara's handwriting. The letter should not have existed, yet it sat heavy in my trembling hands. The envelope was yellowed, edges curling, my name etched in Clara's handwriting, looped and steady, as if written yesterday. My chest clenched. The faintest whiff of perfume drifted from the fold, her perfume, the vanilla lace scent I hadn't smelled since the night I buried her. My fingers shook as I tore it open. The paper crackled like brittle bone. I whispered, barely able to breathe. This can't be real." Lily tilted her head from the corner, eyes wide with curiosity. Clara said you'd read it tonight? Her tone was innocent, but something in the way her lips curled, a too knowing smirk, made my stomach twist. I forced myself not to look at her, not yet. My eyes scanned the words. Not a goodbye. Not an apology. A warning. I fear Robert. If anything happens to me, watch him. Ethan must never know. He can't bear the truth. My throat went dry. The letters blurred, the ink swimming before me. Robert. My brother. The name alone made my jaw clench. The memories rushed back, the arguments, his veiled threats, the way he always smiled too long, too wide, when he didn't get his way. Clara used to whisper about his visits when I was at work, the way his presence unsettled her, and I had dismissed it. Robert? My voice cracked raw. Lily blinked, her small fingers tightening around her doll. Uncle Robert. He told Clara secrets. He told me too. I nearly dropped the letter. What did he tell you? She shrugged, eyes sliding away from mine, like she'd been caught saying too much. I leaned forward desperate. Lily, listen to me. Robert is dangerous, if he ever… Her giggle sliced through me. Light, airy wrong. You're the dangerous one, Daddy. Clara said so? The words knocked the air from my lungs. My vision swam. No, Clara wouldn't. I stopped. My voice broke. My mind screamed denial, but the doubt festered instantly. Clara had cried in my arms so many times, begging me to believe her about Robert. Had she written this when she realized I never truly listened? The letter burned against my skin. I stumbled backward, clutching it so tightly the paper nearly tore. My chest heaved. Every word etched into me like acid, fearing Robert. Ethan must never know. Watch him. The walls seemed to press closer, shadows swelling with every flicker of the moonlight. Lily, I whispered. When did Clara talk to you? When? She tilted her head again, that eerie calmness settling over her face. She talks all the time. You just don't listen. Her eyes glittered. For a moment I swore they weren't hers at all. I pressed the letter to my chest, pacing. The air grew heavy, thick, suffocating. My thoughts tangled. Was this Robert's manipulation, some cruel game he planted in my daughter's head? Or had Clara truly found a way to reach beyond the grave, dragging me back into the guilt I thought I'd buried with her? I remembered Robert's smirk at the funeral, the way his hand lingered on Lily's shoulder too long. My stomach turned. I muttered aloud, half to myself. If Robert's behind this, You'll what? The voice was small, but sharp. Lily had stood now, doll dangling from her hand, her expression unreadable. I swallowed hard. I'll protect you. That's what I'll do. She smiled faintly, but her lips trembled, like she was trying to hold back something else. A nervous tick, a crack in the performance. You can't protect me. Clara said so? She said Robert already knows. The room tilted. My pulse hammered in my ears. I staggered toward the door, desperate to escape the suffocating air. But the letter was still in my grip, mocking me. Clara's words burned, louder than Lily's voice, louder than my own thoughts. I collapsed into the hallway, leaning against the wall. My hands shook so violently I could barely keep hold of the paper. I wanted to tear it apart, burn it, erase it, but I couldn't. Because what if it was true? What if everything Clara had feared was now unfolding before my eyes? The silence of the house grew unbearable. Each creak of the wood felt intentional, every shadow alive. Hours passed like minutes. I must have dozed, though sleep was jagged, restless. And then, a whisper, right beside my ear. Uncle Robert said you'll pay soon. When Lily said Robert's name, the floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Her voice was so small, almost like she was testing the word. Uncle Robert, she whispered, curling her lips around it as though it had always been there. I froze. My fork clattered against the plate, the sound so sharp it cut the air. Robert. I hadn't heard his name spoken aloud in years. Where did you hear that? My voice came out strangled, more like a hiss than a question. Lily tilted her head, blinking at me with those wide, unblinking eyes that always seemed to know more than they should. He told me. He said you'll pay soon. My chest tightened. Lily, what are you talking about? She gave a little shrug, as if it didn't matter. Then she slid from the chair, her tiny feet patting against the kitchen tiles, leaving me cold and trembling. The silence after she left was unbearable. The only sound was the slow, rhythmic drip of the faucet. Each drop struck the sink like a hammer to my skull. Drip, drip, drip. Robert. my brother, my enemy, my mistake. He had always hovered on the edges of my life, circling like a vulture. He resented Clara. He resented me. He resented everything I managed to build without him. But I had cut him out long ago. No calls, no visits, no letters. So how in God's name did Lily know his name? I grabbed my phone with shaking hands. My thumb hovered over the contacts list, scrolling, searching. His number was still there, buried, like a shard of glass I couldn't quite throw away. I hit call. The line rang once, twice, my heart racing with it, before slipping into voicemail. His voice greeted me. Smooth, mocking. The same voice that used to whisper threats when no one else was listening. Robert here. Leave a message. The beep cut through me like a blade. I slammed the phone down, the echo rattling across the table. That night I couldn't sleep. The air felt thick, heavy. Sweat glued my shirt to my skin even though the house was cold. And then the dream came. I was underwater. The world muffled, slow. Clara's hair floated like black ribbons around her pale face. She pressed her palms against the glass, staring at me, her lips moving though I couldn't hear the words. Then the sound rushed in, sharp and piercing. You let him near us. I thrashed against the water, my lungs burning, my fist useless against the glass. She tilted her head, her mouth curling into something between a smile and a snarl. You'll drown like me. I woke with a violent jolt, gasping for air, my sheets soaked through with sweat. And there, standing at the edge of my bed, was Lily. Her face was half-shadowed, her hair falling into her eyes. She spoke so softly I almost thought I was still dreaming. Mommy's cold, she whispered. She's waiting for you. My throat closed. Lily, why are you in here? You scared me. She just stared. Silent. Her small hand clutched the bedpost, knuckles white. Then, without another word, she turned and walked back into the hallway, her figure swallowed by the dark. I lay there, frozen, listening, waiting. Every creak of the old house seemed amplified, like footsteps creeping closer. I didn't sleep again that night. By morning, my body felt hollow, drained. I stumbled into the kitchen, trying to steady my hands enough to pour coffee. The bitter steam rose, but it did nothing to cut through the dread gnawing at me. I couldn't stop hearing her voice. Uncle Robert, you'll pay soon. The knock at the door startled me so badly I spilled half the cup onto the counter. The sound was sharp, deliberate, 3 measured raps that made my stomach lurch. I moved to the door, every step heavier than the last. My hand hovered over the knob, trembling. I opened it, and there he was, Robert, smiling. Robert's voice dragged me back to the night Clara died. I barely had time to steady my shaking hands before the door swung open. There he was, Robert, smirking, smug, uninvited, like he had the right to invade every corner of my life. The sharp tang of his cologne hit me first, burning my nose, making the back of my throat tighten. I felt trapped, my chest tightening, the air too thick to breathe. Cute kid, he said, eyes drifting slowly to Lily, lingering too long. She sat on the floor, building a block tower, oblivious, or pretending to be. Robert, I said, voice tighter than I intended. What are you? I'm just visiting. He interrupted smoothly, stepping inside with that predator's grace. Each step was deliberate, like he wanted me to feel small, like I always had around him. He circled the living room slowly, pausing by the mantel where Clara's photo stood. My pulse roared in my ears. You know, Jimmy. His tone was teasing, almost casual. Clara's death. Not everyone believes it was an accident. I froze, the coffee cup in my hand trembling. Robert, what are you saying? He smirked, hands in his pockets, rocking back on one heel. Just that sometimes, things aren't as neat as people remember. Secrets tend to have a way of surfacing. Lily looked up at him, unblinking, then back at me. That look, like she already knew something, shredded the fragile control I thought I had. My stomach churned. I realized, with a sinking pit of dread, that she had pieces of a puzzle I wasn't ready to confront. Why are you here? I demanded, my voice louder than I intended. My fist clenched, nails digging into my palms. To see you, obviously, he said smoothly, tilting his head, the smirk never leaving. And to remind you that secrets don't stay buried, Jimmy. I wanted to grab him, to shake him, to scream, but the old familiar fear coiled in my gut. Fear and hatred tangled together, leaving me nauseous. He leaned toward Lily for a fraction of a second, whispering something I couldn't catch, before stepping back. The shadow he cast in the hallway seemed to stretch, filling every corner of the room. Then, just as quickly as he appeared, he was gone. No warning. No knocking before he left. Just the faint echo of his boots fading down the street. The house felt hollow after he left. The air smelled faintly of his cologne, the sharp scent lingering like a phantom. I sank onto the couch, my mind spinning. Lily's gaze followed me, dark, knowing. I asked her quietly, almost pleading, "Did he say anything to you?" She shook her head slowly, then whispered, "He said Mommy's cold. She's waiting." I could feel my hands trembling again. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture made my head spin. Lily wasn't just repeating words, she was feeding back riddles, clues I wasn't ready to solve. The clock ticked too loudly. The walls seemed to press inward. Every creak, every subtle shift in the house, made me jump, as if Robert had left more than his cologne behind. He had left a shadow, a sense that nothing was safe. I tried to call Ethan, to ground myself. My fingers hovered over his number, hesitant. But then the phone rang. His name flashed. "Jimmy." His voice sounded normal at first, calm. But then he said, "I'm coming home early. We need to talk about Mom's death." The blood drained from my face. My heart skipped, then hammered like a drum. I sank back onto the couch, staring at Lily, who was quietly stacking blocks, oblivious yet entirely aware of the storm we were standing in. The house felt smaller, claustrophobic. Every shadow, every corner, seemed to breathe and wait. Robert's visit hadn't just unsettled me, it had ripped the fragile veil from reality. Secrets, threats, and ghosts of the past were closing in, and there was no running from them. Ethan was coming home, and he wanted answers. I didn't know if I was ready to give them, or if I could. I called Sarah because I knew the walls were closing in. My hands shook as I dialed her number, the rotary clicks echoing louder than they should in the quiet apartment. Panic clawed at my throat. Ethan's suspicion was like a ticking bomb. I could feel it in the rigid tension of my shoulders, the way my stomach twisted into knots. I needed someone who could think clearly, someone who understood fragments of a truth I could barely voice. The line clicked. A calm, measured voice answered. "James," Sarah said. Calm, firm. A lifeline in the storm. "Sarah, I don't know what to do," I stammered. My voice cracked, betraying the fear I usually kept hidden. "It's Lily, she's been saying things about Robert. About Mom, and there's a letter, Clara's letter. I can't handle this alone." There was a soft scratch of pen on paper. I imagined her notes growing line by line, methodical, precise. "Breathe, James," she said. "Start from the beginning. Tell me everything." I took a shaky breath, recounting Lily's whispers, how she murmured about Robert, how her words were always just on the edge of something I wasn't ready to confront. I told Sarah about Robert's visit, the riddles, the smirk that burned into my memory. And then the letter, its perfume, the warnings, the shadows of past threats Clara had hinted at but never fully explained. I could hear her thinking, the silence stretching like a wire pulled tight across a dark room. "James, someone wants you cornered," she finally said. The words hit me like a fist to the gut. My stomach churned. "It's bigger than you realize, bigger than your family alone." I leaned back, letting the couch's fabric scratch against my arms. The apartment felt colder, the shadows longer. Every corner seemed to hold Robert's presence, even though he had been gone for hours. "I can come tomorrow," Sarah continued. "We'll talk through this plan. But James, you have to stay alert. Every move matters now." "Tomorrow," I whispered, as if saying the word out loud anchored me. But the dread crawled under my skin like ice water. I hung up and sank onto the couch, heart hammering. My eyes drifted to Lily, who sat quietly in her room, blocks scattered around her like fragments of some strange puzzle. I went to tuck her in. The hallway stretched long and silent, the floor creaking under my bare feet, each step echoing like a warning. But when I opened the door, she wasn't there. I called her name, my voice cracking. "Lily? Baby, where are you?" No reply. Just the soft hum of the night air through the cracked window. My chest tightened. My stomach dropped. Every instinct screamed danger, a familiar terror that clawed at my mind, the one I had felt the night Clara had died. The room smelled faintly of vanilla, the remnants of her dollhouse candles, but no warmth, no soft breathing. Nothing. I ran through the apartment, calling, searching, panic rising to a fever pitch. The blocks lay scattered, a silent testimony that she had been there. But now, she was gone. The shadows seemed to lean closer, to mock me. I sank against the wall in the hallway, heart hammering in my ears. My thoughts spun in a dizzying loop. Sarah, Robert, Ethan, Clara, Lily. The phone buzzed on the counter, a text from Sarah. Stay calm. Lock everything. I'll be there first thing. Don't let anyone in. Her words brought a flicker of hope, but it was tangled with dread. Hope for an ally. Fear for what, or who, had taken Lily. The apartment felt like a cage, the air thick, the walls pressing in with invisible hands. I called her name again, louder this time. My voice echoed back at me, empty. Lily wasn't just missing. Something else was here. Something waiting. The bed was warm, but Lily was gone. I froze at the empty sheets, the faint imprint of her small body still lingering. The warmth mocked me, a cruel reminder that she had been there only moments ago. My blood iced over. Panic slammed through me, muscles tensing, fists clenching until my nails dug into my palms. Lily? My voice cracked, splitting the quiet of the apartment like glass. No reply. Every shadow seemed alive. The flicker of the lamp threw long, jagged shapes across the walls, turning corners into hiding places. The floorboards groaned under my frantic steps, each creak a taunt, each echo a drumbeat of impending dread. I tore through the house, calling her name. In the kitchen, the faucet dripped, each drop sharper than a knife. In the hallway, the coat rack loomed like a figure waiting to pounce. The apartment that had once been my sanctuary now felt alien, twisted, a labyrinth of fear. Outside, the wind howled like a scream through the cracks of the windows. Leaves battered against the glass, scraping and rattling, making me jump with every gust. My heart raced, hammering against my ribs as though it wanted to break free. And then I heard it, a soft, rhythmic hum drifting from Clara's old study. I moved toward it, every nerve screaming, every step heavy with dread. The lock on the door was old, and I froze, noticing it hadn't been latched properly. My hand trembled as I pushed the door open. There she was, Lily, sitting cross-legged on the floor, hands folded neatly in her lap. My chest tightened, relief and confusion colliding. But the relief evaporated instantly. Robert sat beside her, calm, smug, like he belonged there. His sharp cologne cut through the dusty air of the room. He smiled, one hand brushing her hair back gently. My fist shook, rage and terror choked me simultaneously. She deserves to know, he said, voice soft but deadly, like silk wrapped around a knife. Robert, I croaked, feeling my throat close. What are you doing here? Get away from her. He didn't move. He tilted his head, eyes glinting with a malicious amusement. She's ready. Ready to understand, to see the truth about Mommy. I felt the room tilt, the floor dropping beneath me. My mind raced. Clara's death, Lily's whispers, the letter. Everything collided in a spiral of horror. Robert leaned close to Lily, whispering words I couldn't catch at first. Her eyes widened. Then she looked at me, tears spilling down her cheeks. Did you kill Mommy? She asked. The question hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled back, knees weak. My world shattered in that instant. Every heartbeat pounded against the walls of my skull. Lily, no! My voice cracked. I wanted to reach for her, to pull her into my arms, but Robert's presence held me frozen, like chains wrapped around my body. He laughed softly, the sound cold and venomous. Confession or not, Jimmy, the truth will come out. I'll tell Ethan everything, unless you do first. I staggered, thoughts scrambling. My mind clung to fragments of hope, to the possibility of saving her. But Robert's calm, predatory gaze, and the innocence in Lily's tear-streaked eyes made it clear. Every move I made now would be a gamble. The air smelled faintly of vanilla and old paper, the remnants of Clara's study, but it felt like poison. My pulse roared in my ears. I felt like a mouse in a trap, knowing the snap was inevitable. Lily looked at me again, small hands gripping her knees. Her eyes searched mine, pleading for answers, for protection, for truth. And in that gaze I saw the weight of my failures, the shadow of Robert's manipulation stretching long and dark. I clenched my fists, swallowing hard against the bow rising in my throat. Every instinct screamed to fight, to protect, but I knew the danger wasn't just outside, it was here, in the room, in the smiles and whispers, in the sharp edges of truth that Robert controlled. Robert's eyes met mine, cold and calculating. Your choice, Jimmy, he said softly. Confess first, or watch everything unravel. Robert's ultimatum wasn't just a threat, It was a noose tightening around my neck. I could feel his eyes drilling into me, the weight of his presence pressing against my chest. My throat went dry. Lily sat silently, small and fragile, trembling like a leaf in a storm. Robert's smile stretched too wide, tight around the edges, forced yet undeniably cruel. "Confess, Jimmy," he whispered, voice smooth, venomous, curling around my brain. "Or I'll raise her to hate you. Every memory, every moment, you'll be the monster in her eyes." I swallowed, my stomach twisting. My mind raced, but every thought collided with memories I'd tried to bury. Clara's bruises, the way Robert had circled her like a predator, the threats, the twisted manipulations. My pulse thundered in my ears, each beat counting down the seconds of impending doom. I opened my mouth, but words stuck. My mind clawed at the edges of truth and lies, trying to discern what I had done and what Robert had orchestrated. Had I killed her? Or had I been a pawn in his meticulous game? The line blurred until guilt and manipulation fused into one suffocating weight. Robert stepped closer. The smell of his cologne, sharp and bitter, filled my nostrils, cutting off rational thought. His fingers brushed Lily's hair again, almost tenderly, as though to prove he owned the moment. "You see, Jimmy," he said, pacing slowly around me, the sound of his shoes on the hardwood echoing in the still room. "Control is everything. And I know exactly how to break you." Lily's eyes darted between us, fear mingling with confusion. She reached for me, small hands shaking. "Daddy." Her whisper was almost swallowed by the thick air, yet I heard it clearly. I wanted to move, to scoop her up, but Robert's gaze pinned me in place. Every muscle in my body froze, as if I were carved from stone. My fists twitched at my sides, nails digging into my palms, but I dared not act. "Tell her the truth, Jimmy." Robert pressed, leaning close, his breath warm against my ear. "Confess to everything, or she'll believe the story I tell. And believe me, it won't be pretty." The words slashed through me. Memories I had fought to suppress surfaced in a brutal flood. The argument, the fear in Clara's eyes, my own rage, my own failings. I wanted to scream, to fight, to demand him to leave, but Robert had stripped me of all defenses. I staggered backward, voice trembling. I can't." He tilted his head, his grin sharpening, eyes glinting like a blade. "You will, Jimmy? Or watch your daughter turn against you. Every laugh, every secret, every bedtime story, you'll be the villain she never forgets." The room seemed to shrink, walls closing in. The air was thick with tension, suffocating, carrying the metallic tang of fear. My mind raced, calculating, replaying every interaction, every whisper, every threat. I felt trapped in a nightmare of my own life, unable to discern where Robert's lies ended and my own mistakes began. And then, the door slammed open. "Enough!" Sarah's voice cut through the room like a gunshot. I blinked, startled, relief and dread warring in my chest. My lawyer stormed in, pen and notepad in hand, eyes sharp and unwavering. Robert's grin faltered, just for a fraction of a second, before he regained his composure. Sarah stepped between us, scanning him with the precision of someone who had seen manipulation before and refused to bow to it. "James," she said, voice firm but steady, "start talking. Right now." In front of him. The air was electric. Lily clutched my sleeve, her tiny fingers trembling. Robert's gaze sharpened, calculating, and I realized the stakes had just doubled. Confess here, or lose everything. But I wasn't alone anymore. The room seemed to hold its breath. My heartbeat roared, my throat ached, and I knew whatever I said next would determine not only my fate but Lily's trust, Robert's game, and the fragile remnants of my sanity. Sarah's eyes bore into mine. "James, tell him. Tell everything. Now." Robert's pride became his undoing. Sarah's sharp eyes darted between us, assessing, calculating. She insisted on recording everything, her fingers brushing over the device with a quiet precision that sent a ripple of hope through me. My palms were slick with sweat. Lily huddled close, clutching my arm, her small body shaking. Robert leaned back, smirk plastered across his face, but the twitch in his jaw betrayed the arrogance he tried so hard to project. I let my silence hang heavy in the room, letting it fester, letting it tease. Robert's gaze flicked to the recorder, then to me, a predator measuring prey. His voice started low, smooth, venomous, each word deliberate. "You think I fear you, Jimmy? You have no idea what you've stirred." Sarah leaned slightly forward, eyes never leaving him. "Then prove it," she said softly. Tell us everything. The smirk faltered just for a second, then widened again, but it carried a twitch of unease I'd never seen before. I could feel it, the shift in energy, the first crack in his armor. Robert's pace grew erratic. His fingers drummed against the edge of the table, and the sound seemed unnaturally loud in the still room. He started revealing things, tiny details only someone present at Clara's death could have known. She wasn't supposed to be there, he said, voice rising. The car, it shouldn't have, but she opened the door anyway. My chest constricted. Every word was a punch, each revelation a splinter wedged deep into the nerves I had left intact. Sarah's hand tightened around the recorder, her knuckles widening. Stop talking! I shouted, but the words came out strangled, weak. Robert's laughter cut through, harsh and brittle. Oh, Jimmy, you think silence will protect you? Secrets have a way of spilling, and His voice hitched. He leaned closer to Lily, his eyes dark, calculating. I told her the truth. Don't you want to hear her ask you about it? Lily's eyes widened, shimmering with tears. Did you kill Mommy? She whispered. Her voice trembled, and my stomach turned. Robert's grin sharpened, teeth catching the dim light. See? Even she wants answers. And I can give them, if you confess. But he didn't notice Sarah, didn't notice the subtle shift in the room's energy. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, watched him like a hawk. Her hand rested on the recorder, ready. I could feel the tension radiating from her, and for the first time, I sensed control slipping from Robert's hands. You always thought you were clever, she said, her voice low but cutting. But people who think they're untouchable tend to forget one thing: evidence never lies. Robert froze, his arrogance cracking. His voice rose, dripping with malice. You don't understand. That night I stayed silent, letting him unravel. Every flinch, every stammer, every trembling word fed into the trap we had set. His pride, his need to dominate, had blinded him to the fact that he was confessing, recorded, in front of witnesses, with a lawyer ready to expose him. James, Sarah said quietly, her tone commanding. Remember, breathe. Don't interrupt. Let him slip. The room was tense, electric. My chest heaved, sweat stinging my eyes, fear and anticipation warping together. Lily's tiny fingers clenched mine. The sound of Robert's own voice detailing the crime was almost unbearable, yet it was exactly what we needed. And then, in a sudden motion, Robert lunged for the recorder. His smirk twisted into a snarl, eyes wild, desperation replacing arrogance. The world seemed to freeze. Sarah's hand shot forward, my arms instinctively tensing, Lily's gasp slicing the heavy air. Everything teetered on the edge of chaos. Robert lunged. Sarah braced. I held my breath. Lily's tears fell freely. Violence erupted, and I lost control. The room became chaos in an instant. Robert's sudden lunge for the recorder sent it clattering to the floor with a sharp crack, bouncing against the wooden leg of the table. My heart slammed against my ribs, rage surging hotter than fear. Without thinking, I grabbed him, pinning him against the wall. His smirk faltered, replaced by panic, his arms flailing, trying to push me off, but my grip tightened. Run! Sarah screamed, her voice cutting through the storm of shouts and crashing furniture. Lily, go, now! Lily's wide eyes met mine, terror mirrored in hers. I nodded fiercely, letting go of Robert for just long enough for her to dash past, small feet thudding against the hardwood. The scent of sweat and fear was thick, almost choking me, mingling with the sharp tang of blood from a split lip I hadn't noticed. Robert spat, his face contorted with fury. You think you? He hissed, but I interrupted, voice low, dangerous. I don't think, Robert. I know. He lunged again, teeth bared in a grotesque parody of a grin. I sidestepped, grabbed him, and slammed him against the desk. Papers scattered, books tumbled to the floor, and the metallic scrape of a chair tipped over punctuated the chaos. Sarah's hand hovered over the recorder, trembling slightly. James, be careful, she warned, though her tone carried steel. I barely heard her. Adrenaline masked every warning. Robert's arrogance had been replaced by sheer terror, and it fueled the storm inside me. I shoved him toward the edge of the room, and he collided with the desk again, the corner striking the side of his head with a sickening thud. His body went rigid for a moment, and then sagged, limp against the floor. Silence fell, but only for a heartbeat. The room smelled of sweat, blood, and shattered wood, the kind of stillness that screams louder than any noise. My chest heaved, heart hammering as I stared down at him. His eyes were open but blank, staring at nothing, the fight drained from his body. Sarah moved forward, picking up the recorder and checking the display. Her face paled. James, it's all there. Every word, every confession. The truth. She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the device. It's finally here. I sank against the wall, shaking, letting the adrenaline ebb into exhaustion. Rage and terror had collided, leaving me raw, trembling. Every memory of Clara flashed through my mind. The bruises, the silent screams, the manipulation, the lies. And now, the monster that had haunted us for years lay broken, his truth captured, undeniable. Lily peeked from behind Sarah, tiny hands gripping the edge of her skirt. Her eyes were wet, her lips trembling. I wanted to scoop her up, to shield her from every shadow that had touched our lives, but I couldn't move, couldn't trust the ground beneath me or the quiet that pressed in from all sides. Is he? Lily's voice broke, fragile. He's not going anywhere for a long time, Sarah said firmly, her hand resting on my shoulder. Her gaze shifted to mine, sharp, grounding. We got him. Everything he did, everything, recorded. You did what you had to. I nodded numbly, chest tight, mind still reeling from the violence, the chaos, the terror of losing control. And then, above the lingering heartbeat of silence, a creak at the doorway pulled my attention. I looked up. Ethan stood there, frozen, eyes wide, horror etched across his face, his hand trembling on the doorframe. The sight of him, a witness to the aftermath of rage and revelation, jolted me. The fragile bubble of relief shattered. Robert's body lay on the floor, his smirk gone, replaced by an emptiness that chilled me more than any threat ever had. And now, facing Ethan, I realized that the reckoning wasn't over, not yet. Ethan's gaze locked on Robert's prone form, and then on me, disbelief and fear battling in his expression. The next words he spoke could undo everything, or seal it forever. Ethan's silence hurt more than any accusation. The room was thick with tension, heavy enough to taste. Lily clung to Sarah, little shoulders shaking as sobs racked her body. I felt paralyzed, guilt and fear intertwining until my chest ached with it. Ethan's eyes bore into mine, sharp, searching, demanding the truth. I swallowed, dry throat rasping, and began to speak. I never wanted you to find out like this, I whispered, voice breaking. Robert, he was obsessed with Clara. He threatened us, manipulated everything. That night, she didn't mean to, My words stumbled over themselves, half confessions, half desperate truths. I didn't know where honesty ended and self-preservation began. Ethan's fists clenched so tightly his knuckles whitened. You're telling me this, after all these years? His voice trembled, barely controlled. After everything? I didn't know who to trust, I admitted, voice small. Sarah, she knows. She recorded him. Every word. Everything. The mention of the recording made him flinch. I gestured to Sarah, who lifted the device. Her hand was steady now, the tremor gone, replaced with determination. Ethan, you need to hear this, she said softly, almost gentle, but there was steel beneath it. The recorder clicked on. Robert's voice filled the room, smooth, mocking, chillingly intimate. You'll never know what I did for her, the control, the games, she deserved it, she always did. Ethan's eyes widened, the disbelief battling the horror in his expression. His jaw clenched, muscles taut, and I saw the color drain from his face. He stumbled back, almost colliding with the sofa, his body trembling with rage and grief. James, his voice cracked, raw. All this time, you survived it, you. He shook his head, hands gripping his hair. Tears welled and spilled over, hot against his cheeks. I can't believe this. Sarah gently pulled Lily closer, murmuring reassurances. I watched my daughter's tiny face buried in Sarah's shoulder, her tears wetting the fabric of her dress. I wanted to gather her in my arms, to shield her from the horror we'd endured, but the scene before me left me frozen, powerless to rewrite any of it. I turned back to Ethan, voice breaking. He killed her, Ethan. Clara, I couldn't finish. The recording played on, Robert recounting details only the killer could know, words twisted with arrogance and cruelty. Every syllable struck like a blow. The reality of it hit Ethan like a physical punch. His knees buckled, and he sank to the floor. Tears streamed freely now, his sobs raw, uncontrolled. I knelt beside him, hand hovering over his shoulder. I wanted to comfort, to explain, but words felt empty. His grief was a punishment more devastating than anything Robert had inflicted. The weight of my secrets, my silence, bore down on me, heavier than any guilt I'd ever carried. Sarah's voice cut through the room like a blade. It's over. The truth is here. You can finally see it. He's gone, but this is proof. I looked at Lily, small and trembling, and then at Ethan, broken, his tears soaking the carpet. I had survived, we had survived, but survival felt hollow amidst the ruins of our family, hearts shattered by betrayal and loss. The air smelled of sweat and fear, the quiet punctuated by the hum of the recording still playing Robert's voice, a ghostly echo of the man who had ruled our lives with cruelty. Finally, silence returned. The only sound was Lily's soft sniffles and Ethan's uneven breathing. I sank to the floor beside my son, wrapping an arm around him, feeling the rawness of our shared grief. The truth was out, but it had come at a cost none of us could measure. Weeks passed in a haze. The city moved on, indifferent, while we stitched together what remained of our lives. Then, one gray morning, the mail arrived. My hands shook as I saw the envelope. Familiar handwriting, sharp, precise, unmistakable. Robert's. I froze, pulse hammering. The past I thought buried had returned, and I realized the nightmare was far from over. I held the envelope in trembling hands, knowing that whatever it contained could undo every ounce of relief we'd fought for, or plunge us deeper into terror. Robert was gone, but his shadow never left. The mail had come like any other day, mundane, innocuous, until I saw the envelope, cream-colored, edges slightly frayed, the unmistakable scent of stale tobacco clinging to it. My pulse quickened, a cold dread settling over me. I recognized that smell immediately. Robert's signature habit, the invisible mark he left wherever he went. My hands shook as I picked it up, fingers trembling so badly that I nearly dropped it on the floor. I hesitated, knowing instinctively that whatever lay inside wasn't just paper. It was a trap, a final extension of his control. The air felt heavy, almost viscous, pressing down on my chest. I swallowed, dry and hoarse. Slowly, I opened the envelope, the paper crackling like brittle bones. Inside, a single sheet of lined paper. The handwriting was sharp, deliberate, familiar. My stomach twisted as my eyes fell on the words, the lines crawling toward me like some living, venomous thing. You may think you've won. You may think justice has been served. But the truth lingers, buried like a seed waiting to grow. Lily will always wonder if it was really me, or you. If she looks into your eyes and sees my reflection, will she know the difference? I felt my knees weaken. The room seemed to tilt. Lily, playing quietly with blocks in the corner, glanced up at me with those wide, questioning eyes. Innocent yet haunted, carrying a weight I didn't dare imagine. I wanted to scoop her into my arms, shield her from the poison Robert had left behind, but even that felt futile. The shadow of him stretched into every corner of our lives, lingering, insidious. Do you hear her sometimes? Singing in the dark? That lullaby Clara used to hum? It isn't gone, it lives on. And someday, you'll wonder if it was ever meant to comfort her, or remind her. Every choice you've made will have a shadow, and I am it. The words wrapped around me like chains, tightening. My chest ached not from fear, but from the knowledge that the damage he had inflicted wouldn't vanish with his death. He had planted doubt, crafted it carefully, ensuring it would fester long after the courtroom doors closed and the evidence was laid bare. I felt Lily's gaze linger on me again, small brows furrowed. She didn't speak, but I could see the unasked questions in her eyes. Did Mommy do it? Could Mommy hurt me? The mere thought made bile rise in my throat. I wanted to assure her, to swear that I was her mother, and nothing more. But how could I undo a shadow that had been cast by someone who had already left this world? I crumpled the letter slightly, hard hammering, the paper cutting into my fingers. The smell of tobacco lingered, suffocating, like Robert was still here, leaning over my shoulder, whispering poison into my thoughts. The room was silent except for Lily's soft breaths, yet every corner seemed to hum with his presence. I tried to speak, to fill the void with reassurance, but words felt useless. My voice caught. Lily, Mommy is here. I'm always here. She looked at me, eyes searching, trusting, but beneath that trust was a hint of uncertainty, a shadow of doubt Robert had seeded so thoroughly that even love couldn't erase it. The paper slipped from my fingers onto the floor. I stared at it, knowing the lines would haunt me for the rest of my life. Justice had been served, yet victory felt hollow, overshadowed by the psychological chains he had left behind. His words weren't just ink, they were a lingering ghost, a final manipulation ensuring we never felt safe, never fully healed. I bent down, picking Lily up, holding her close. She rested her head against my shoulder, sighing softly, and I felt tears slip down my cheeks. I wanted to believe that one day, the innocence in her gaze would return completely, but Robert's shadow was already written into her memory, and in mine. And in the silence that followed, I realized the truth: some victories aren't final, some battles never truly end. Robert may have left this world, but he would always linger in the spaces between our breaths, in the quiet of night, in the lullaby that Clara once sang. Every night, I still hear Clara's lullaby, and I wonder if Lily does too,